All right, let's talk about something that, on the surface, sounds like a pretty great problem to have, right? Managing a winning streak. But here's the thing, it's secretly one of the most treacherous moments in all of trading. It turns out that non-stop success can be just as damaging psychologically as a brutal losing streak. Today, we're going to break down exactly why that is.
So let me just ask you this right off the bat. Forget market crashes, forget making a bad call. What do you think is the single most dangerous moment for any trader?
And the answer, believe it or not, is right here. It's not when you're losing. It's when you feel like you just can't lose. This is the big paradox we're going to unpack together today.
And that brings us to what we call the winning streak paradox. So why on earth is success a risk? Well, because it breeds a really dangerous enemy, overconfidence. That feeling of having the hot hand, it can make you totally abandon the very discipline that got you there in the first place.
Okay, so let's get specific. Let's really diagnose this overconfidence trap. We're going to break down the exact psychological triggers that pop up when everything is going your way, because, recognizing them is the absolute first step to overcoming them.
It's kind of like this vicious cycle where one bad habit just feeds the next. It all starts with pure euphoria. You feel on top of the world, but then you start moving the goalposts. Suddenly, a good gain doesn't feel good enough anymore. And that leads straight to FOMO, where you start chasing trades you have no business being in. And finally, complacency sets in. You get lazy. You just assume the good times will last forever.
And all of this leads to what the source material calls the invincibility complex. This is really the final stage of the trap. It's this deep-seated belief that you've cracked the code, that you can do no wrong. And that right there is precisely when you are most vulnerable to a catastrophic loss, because your respect for risk, it has completely disappeared.
Okay, so that's the problem, and it's a big one. So how do we fix it? How do we stay grounded when we're flying high? Well, it all comes down to two absolute non-negotiable rules for keeping discipline in your strategy.
Now, the solution sounds deceptively simple, but it is incredibly powerful. First, you have to lock down your position sizing. No exceptions. And second, you must adhere to your strategy like it's the law. Seriously, these are not suggestions. They're the guardrails that are going to stop your success from driving you right off a cliff.
And here's the key distinction. As your account grows, sure, your position size should grow with it, but organically, because you're using a fixed percentage for risk. The danger is when you get greedy and you decide, you know what, I'm going to risk 3% per trade instead of my usual 1%. That's not confidence, my friend. That's just gambling with your hard-won capital.
And think about it this way. A winning streak is literally the market validating your rules. It's screaming at you, hey, what you're doing is working. So why in the world would you respond to that by abandoning those rules for some random gut feeling? You gotta stick with what works.
Making money is one thing, but keeping it, that's a whole different ballgame. Now that we have our core discipline down, let's talk about some more advanced tactics you can use to protect those profits and make sure a winning streak actually turns into long-term wealth.
I absolutely love this quote. It just completely reframes the entire objective of trading, doesn't it? It's not about a few spectacular wins. It's about systematically building and, just as important, preserving your capital over the long haul. Keeping your profits is an active process, not a passive one.
Now this next part, it requires some really honest self-reflection. You have to ask yourself, is this success coming from skill, or am I just riding a massive wave of luck? Skill is disciplined, repeatable execution. Luck is catching a temporary market trend or an industry boom. Confusing the two is a fatal error, because I promise you, when that luck runs out, it will expose every single flaw in your process.
So what are the classic ways traders manage to give back all their gains? Well, first, there's the give it back phenomenon. A small loss triggers this impulsive need for revenge trading. Second, they abandon their edge. They drop a proven method to chase the next hot trend. And third, they start ignoring market regimes, basically using a strategy that just doesn't fit the current market conditions anymore.
Okay, so this brings us to our final section. How do we move beyond just surviving a winning streak and actually use it as a foundation for a long, sustainable trading career? This is all about building professional habits and a professional mindset.
Look, the pros, they build a system around their success. They keep a diligent trading journal so they can separate what was luck from what was skill. They set clear benchmarks to manage their own expectations. They avoid lifestyle creep, not buying a new car after one good month, to keep the pressure off. They find someone to hold them accountable, maybe a mentor or a peer group. And they never, ever, ever stop learning.
Ultimately, you just have to remember, markets are cyclical. A period of awesome performance will inevitably be followed by challenges. The discipline you build during the good times is the armor that's going to protect you when things get tough.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Look, knowing how to win a few trades, that's one thing. That's execution. But true, lasting success, that requires a completely different set of skills: humility, discipline, and some serious self-awareness. So ask yourself, are you just prepared to win the next trade, or are you truly prepared to succeed for the long run?